Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got a story that's gonna mess with your head dits about a creepy old house, a mysterious truck, and a night that still haunts me. Trust me, you're not gonna want to miss this. One, it's raw, it's real, and it's seriously messed up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss out on more stories like this. Give this video a big thumbs up if you're ready to get spooked. And don't forget to smack that bell icon so you're the first to know when I drop something new. All right, let's dive into this nightmare. Grab a snack, turn off the lights, and let's go. I still don't know how to explain what happened in that damn house, but I'll try. Me and Paul, my college roommate, were renting this old place out in the middle of nowhere, think dirt roads. No neighbors for miles, just trees and silence. It was a 2-story dump, peeling gray paint, windows that rattled even when there was no wind, and this musty smell like wet wood and something sour you couldn't pin down. The floors creaked like crazy, and the whole place leaned a little, like it was tired of standing up. We moved in because it was cheap, and we were broke students who didn't care about charm. That first month, it was just a quirky, annoying house until that night hit me like a freight train. It was late March, cold as hell, and I'd been asleep maybe an hour when Paul shook me awake, his voice all tight and freaked out. He said there was a truck outside, just sitting there on the road, engine rumbling low like a growl. I figured he was overreacting, maybe some lost redneck, but the way his eyes were wide, I couldn't ignore it. I dragged myself to the window, and there it was. This beat-up, black pickup, idling under the moonlight, no driver in sight. At first I thought it was nothing, just some weird coincidence. The truck looked old, like something from the 50s. Rusted fenders and a cracked windshield that caught the light funny. It was parked maybe 50 feet from the house, right where our patchy gravel driveway met the road. I squinted, trying to see inside, but the cab was pitch black, like the shadows were thicker than they should have been. The engine kept chugging, steady and deep, vibrating through the floorboards under my bare feet. Paul was whispering behind me, asking why it was just sitting there, and I didn't have an answer. I told him maybe the driver stepped out to take a leak or something, but even I didn't buy it. There was nobody around. No footsteps, no nothing. The house felt heavier then, like it was holding its breath with us. I grabbed my phone, thinking I'd call somebody, but the signal was dead typical for that spot. We stood there, staring, waiting for something to happen. And that's when I noticed the front door downstairs creak open an inch, all on its own. My stomach dropped, and Paul grabbed my arm, his nails digging in. I swore I'd locked that door before Bud always did, because the house gave me the creeps, even on normal days. But there it was, cracked open, letting in this cold draft that smelled like damp earth and something metallic. I told Paul to stay put and crept downstairs, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The living room was dark, just the faint glow from the truck's headlights cutting through the curtains, painting these shaky yellow lines on the warped wood floor. I got to the door and pushed it shut, hard, the click of the lock echoing in the silence. For a second, I thought I heard something outside, like a low hum under the truck's engine, almost like a voice, but too faint to be sure. I shook it off, told myself it was just the wind or my nerves, and bolted back upstairs. Paul was still by the window, staring at that damn truck, and he muttered that it hadn't moved an inch. I looked out again, and he was right. It was like the thing was glued to the spot, headlights boring into the house like eyes. The air in the room felt thick, like it was pressing down on us, and I couldn't shake the feeling the house knew something we didn't. We decided to ignore it, or at least try. I told Paul it was probably some glitchy old junker someone abandoned, and we'd deal with it in the morning. But sleep wasn't happening, not with that engine rumbling through the walls, rattling the loose panes in the windows. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, this water-stained mess with cracks that looked like veins in the dark. Around 2 a.m., the noise changed. It wasn't just the engine anymore. This scratchy, old-timey music started drifting in, like something from a busted radio, all warbly violins and static. I shot up, and Paul was already sitting there, pale as a ghost, saying he heard it too. We stumbled to the window, and the truck was still there, but now it was closer, maybe 30 feet from the house, parked crooked, like it had rolled forward on its own. That music was coming from it, loud enough to make my skin crawl, but there was still no one in the cab. I felt this shiver run through me, not just from the cold. The house felt alive then, like it was listening to that tune with us, and I swear the floorboards groaned louder than usual, like they were humming along. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was up with that truck. I told Paul I was going out there, and he grabbed my arm, begging me not to, his voice all shaky like he was about to cry. I get it now, why he was so scared, but back then I just felt pissed like whatever was messing with us needed to cut it out. I yanked on my boots, grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen, and headed downstairs. The second I opened that front door again, the music got louder, sharper, like it was pissed I'd interrupted it. The air outside was freezing, but it was more than that. It felt wrong, heavy, like walking through soup. The truck's headlights hit me square in the face, blinding me for a second, and I stumbled down the porch steps, the wood sagging under my weight. When I got closer, maybe 20 feet away, I shined the flashlight into the cab. Nothing. No driver, no keys in the ignition, just this empty, rusted shell vibrating with that creepy music. I turned back to the house, and I swear the windows looked darker, like they'd swallowed up all the light from inside. I yelled at Paul to come down, to see it for himself, because I was starting to think I was losing it. He poked his head out the door, all hunched up like he was scared the house would bite him, and I waved him over. He took one step onto the porch, and that's when the truck's engine revved loud, like a snarl, cutting through the music. We both froze. The headlights flared brighter, and I felt this jolt, like the ground shifted under me. Paul screamed my name, pointing at the house, and I turned just in time to see the curtains in the living room twitch like something inside had moved them. My chest went tight, and I bolted back toward the porch, dragging Paul inside with me. We slammed the door shut, and I locked it again, my hands shaking so bad I dropped the flashlight. The music was still going, louder now, seeping through the walls like the house was soaking it in. I looked at Paul, and he was just staring at the floor, muttering that we should have never moved here, that the house wanted this. We didn't know what to do, so we just sat there on the couch, backs against the wall, listening to that music drill into our heads. It wasn't just annoying, it was suffocating, like it was wrapping around my lungs and squeezing. The house felt different then, like it was awake. The air got colder, and I noticed my breath fogging up in front of me, even though the heat was on earlier. Paul kept glancing at the stairs, like he expected something to come down them. And I couldn't blame him. The shadows up there looked too thick, too solid. Then the lights flickered, just once, but it was enough to make us both jump. I got up to check the breaker box in the kitchen, but when I stepped into the hall, the floorboards didn't just creak, they buckled, like something heavy was pressing down with me. I stopped, heart hammering, and that's when I heard it. A low thud from upstairs, right above my head. Paul heard it too. He looked at me like I'd just sentenced us to death by moving. The truck outside revved again, and the music hit this warped, screeching note that made my teeth hurt. I told myself it was just the house settling. Old places do that, right? But deep down I knew that was bullshit. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet, don't even know why we had it. Neither of us played and told Paul we had to check upstairs. He shook his head so hard I thought he'd snap his neck. But I wasn't staying down there waiting for whatever was up there to come to us. The stairs were narrow, paint chipped off the edges, and every step groaned like it hated me. Halfway up, I smelled it again, that sour metallic stink, stronger now, like it was leaking out of the walls. When we got to the landing, the hallway stretched out in front of us, darker than it should have been with the lights on downstairs. The thud came again, from my room this time, and I felt this pull like the house was daring me to open that door. Paul was whimpering behind me, saying we should call someone, but I was too freaked out to think straight. I gripped the bat tighter, my palms sweaty, and pushed the door open with my foot. The room was empty, just my messy bed and desk, but the window was wide open, letting that damn music flood in. I know I didn't leave that window open. It had been shut tight when I went to bed, and it was too cold to crack it anyway. I ran over to slam it down, but when I got close, I saw the truck again, closer now, maybe 10 feet from the house, headlights aimed right up at me. That music was blasting, all warped and tinny, like it was mocking us. I yanked the window shut, but the sound didn't stop, was inside now, bouncing off the walls, making the whole room hum. Paul was behind me, breathing fast, saying over and over that we were screwed. I turned to tell him to chill, but then I saw the shadow on the wall behind him. It wasn't his, wasn't mine either, just this tall, jagged shape that didn't match anything in the room. I blinked, and it was gone, but my skin was crawling, and I felt this sick twist in my gut. The house wasn't just old or creepy anymore, it was alive, and it was pissed. I grabbed Paul's arm and pulled him back toward the door, but the floor tilted under us, like it was trying to trip me up. We stumbled into the hall, and that's when the lights went out, Completely no flicker, just black. The only light left was the truck's headlights slicing through the windows downstairs, throwing these long, shaky beams up the walls. I could still hear the engine, that low growl mixing with the music, and it felt like it was coming from inside the house now, not just outside. My bat felt useless in my hands, but I held on to it anyway, swinging it at the dark like an idiot. Paul was clutching my shirt, whispering that we should run. Get out! But I couldn't move. My legs felt locked, like the house wouldn't let me. Then the thudding started again, faster this time, like footsteps pacing above us, even though we were on the top floor. I looked up at the ceiling, and there was this dark stain spreading across it, wet and shiny, dripping something black onto the floor. One drop hit my hand, cold and sticky, and I wiped it off on my jeans, gagging. The air smelled like rot now, thick and choking, and I realized the house wasn't just messing with us, it was showing us something. I don't know how I got my phone out with my hand shaking like that, but I did, praying for a signal. Miraculously, one bar popped up just enough to call 911. I was babbling to the operator, trying to explain the truck, the noises, the house, but it all came out like a mess. She told me to calm down, said they'd send someone, but her voice kept cutting out, static crackling over the line, like that damn music was jamming it. Paul was pacing behind me, muttering about the stain, how it was moving, and when I looked up, he was right, it was spreading, curling down the walls like veins. The truck revved outside, so loud the windows rattled, and I heard the operator say something about a unit being close before the call dropped. I shoved the phone in my pocket, grabbed Paul, and told him we were getting downstairs, help was coming. We just had to hold on. But the stairs felt different going down, spongy almost, like the wood was rotting under us. The air was so cold my teeth were chattering, and that metallic smell was everywhere, sticking to my throat. We hit the living room, and it was a nightmare. The truck's headlights were blasting through the windows, lighting up every crack in the walls, every splinter on the floor. But the shadows were wrong, too long, too sharp, moving when we didn't. The music was deafening now, some old song I couldn't place, all scratched up and looping. I ran to the front door, thinking we'd bolt outside and wait for the cops, but the knob wouldn't turn, it was stuck, or locked, or something, even though I'd just opened it earlier. Paul started banging on it, yelling for help, and I joined him, slamming the bat against the wood. It didn't budge, but the walls groaned, like the house was laughing at us. Then I heard tires crunching. Gravel the truck was moving again, circling the house now, its lights flashing through every window like it was stalking us. I turned to Paul, and his face was white, eyes huge, pointing at the ceiling. Those black drips were pooling on the floor now, forming this slick, shiny puddle that stank like death. I felt like the house was swallowing us whole, and we were running out of time. We were losing it when I finally heard sirens faint at first, then louder, cutting through that awful music. I ran to the window, and there was a cop car pulling up, lights flashing red and blue against the house's crooked frame. The truck was still out there, parked again, maybe 15 feet away, just sitting like it was waiting. This guy, Officer Donnie, got out, looking annoyed more than anything, like he thought we were prank calling him. I was yelling through the glass, telling him to watch the truck, but he just waved me off and walked toward it, flashlight in hand. The music dipped for a second, like it was holding its breath, and I felt this pit in my stomach like something bad was about to happen. Donnie shined his light into the cab, same as I did, empty. No driver, nothing. He turned back to us, shrugging, and I saw his mouth move, probably saying it was fine. But then the truck's engine roared, and he jumped back. The house shook with it, the walls trembling like they were excited, and I swear I heard that thudding upstairs again. Faster now. Donnie yelled something at us, couldn't hear it over the noise, and started messing with the truck's door. It opened easy for him, which freaked me out because I'd tried earlier and got nothing. He leaned inside, poking around, and Paul was clawing at my arm, saying we should tell him to stop. I didn't get a chance the second Donnie touched the steering wheel. The doors slammed shut on their own, locking him in. He banged on the window, his face all twisted up, and that's when the truck started rolling forward, slow, like it was teasing us. The headlights dimmed, and this weird, translucent film started creeping over the windows, like a skin growing over them. Dark liquid seeped out, running down the glass, and Donnie's screams got muffled, like he was underwater. The house went nuts, then the lights flickered back on, dim and yellow, and the floorboards buckled hard, throwing me and Paul against the wall. The music screeched, high and jagged, and I watched that truck creep down the road. Donnie still trapped, until it just vanished into the dark, like the night swallowed it up. I don't even know how long we stood there, staring out the window where the truck disappeared. Paul was shaking so bad I thought he'd collapse, and I wasn't much better. My legs felt like jelly, and my head was spinning. The music was gone, the engine noise too, just this heavy silence pressing down on us. The cop car sat there, lights still flashing, but Donnie was nowhere. I kept telling myself he'd show up, that it was some messed up trick, but deep down I knew he was gone. The house felt smug, if that makes sense, like it had won something. The black puddle on the floor was still there, bigger now, reflecting the flickering lights in a way that made my stomach churn. I grabbed Paul and dragged him to the couch, away from that mess. But the air was still thick with that rot smell, and every creak of the walls sounded like a laugh. We didn't say a word, just sat there waiting for more cops, praying they'd believe us. They showed up maybe 20 minutes later, 2 cars this time, tires kicking up gravel as they screeched to a stop. I unlocked the door somehow. It worked fine now, like the house was playing nice, and stumbled out, yelling about Donnie and the truck. The cops were all business, radios crackling, flashlights sweeping the yard. One of them, a big guy with a buzzcut, grabbed me and Paul, asking what the hell happened, while the others checked the empty cop car. I tried explaining the truck, the music, the house, but it sounded insane even to me. They kept looking at that black stuff on the floor, then at us, like we'd done something to Donnie. The whole time, the house just sat there, quiet now, but I could feel it watching. One cop went upstairs, came back pale, saying there was more of that black gunk up there, dripping from the ceiling. I wanted to scream that it wasn't us, that the house did it, but they weren't buying it. They hauled us to the station, and I kept looking back at that sagging gray heap, wondering what it was hiding. The station was a blur, harsh lights, stale coffee smell, and cops staring at us like we were killers. They split me and Paul up, put me in this tiny room with a metal table and a guy who looked like he hadn't slept in days. He kept asking where Donnie was, what we did to him, and I just kept saying the same thing. The truck took him, the house let it happen. He slammed his hand on the table, calling me a liar, saying they'd found nothing out there. No truck, no tracks, just Donnie's car. I told him about the music, the black stuff, how the house locked us in, but he just scribbled notes and glared. Then he showed me this grainy dash cam clip from Donnie's car. It was shaky, but you could see the truck, headlights glowing, rolling away into the dark. My heart stopped because I thought it'd proved me right, but the cop said it cut out right after. No sign of Donnie or anything else. I begged him to check the house again, that it wasn't normal, but he just leaned back, arms crossed, like I was wasting his time. Paul was in worse shape when they brought him in to compare stories. He was crying, saying he couldn't go back there, that the house wanted us dead. The cops didn't care. They kept grilling us, asking if we were on drugs, if we'd fought with Donnie. I wanted to punch something, because none of it made sense to them, but it was burned into my head. The way the walls shook, the puddle growing, that film on the truck's windows. They let us go after hours of that. No charges, just a warning to stay out of trouble. We didn't have a ride, so some rookie dropped us back at the house around dawn. The sun was coming up, painting the place this sickly orange. And it looked normal, again, peeling paint, crooked porch, quiet. But I couldn't shake the feeling it was waiting for us to step inside. Paul refused. He sat on the gravel, head in his hands, saying he'd rather sleep outside. I didn't blame him, but I had to grab my stuff, my keys, my wallet, anything to get out of there. The second I crossed the threshold, the air hit me again, cold and sour, like it had been holding onto the night. I didn't want to be in there any longer than I had to, so I bolted upstairs to my room, trying to ignore how the stairs creaked like they were complaining. The black stain was still on the ceiling, dried now, crusty and cracked like old blood, but it didn't smell as bad, just this faint sour temps that made my eyes water. I grabbed my backpack, shoving clothes and my laptop inside, my hands shaking the whole time. The window was shut, like I'd left it, but when I glanced out, I froze. There was this faint outline in the dirt where the truck had been, like it had burned itself into the ground. My chest got tight, and I turned to leave, but then I heard it, a soft scrape, like something dragging across the floor downstairs. I told myself it was Paul, that he'd come in after me, but I knew he wouldn't. He was too scared. The house was so quiet otherwise. No wind, no birds, just that sound getting louder, closer. I gripped my bag and took a step toward the door, but the floorboards flexed under me, like they were pushing back. I yelled for Paul, my voice cracking, hoping he'd answer and prove I wasn't alone with whatever was down there. Nothing, just that, scraping, steady now, like nails on wood. I forced myself into the hall, and the air felt heavier, like it was clinging to me. The lights were off, but that sickly dawn glow came through the windows, showing me the walls. More of that black stuff had streaked down them, thin lines like it was bleeding slow. I made it to the stairs, and that's when I saw it. The front door was open again, just a crack, swaying like something had brushed past it. My heart was in my throat, and I took the steps 2 at a time, almost tripping over my own feet. When I hit the living room, the scraping stopped, but the black puddle was back fresh, wet, spreading out from the center of the floor like it had been waiting for me. I didn't look too long, I just ran, bursting out the door and into the yard where Paul was still sitting, staring at the house like he'd seen a ghost. Paul jumped up when he saw me, asking what the hell took so long, and I just shoved him toward the car, saying we were done with that place. I threw my bag in the back, hands still trembling, and peeled out of there so fast the tires spun on the gravel. The house sat in the rearview mirror, shrinking as we hauled ass down the dirt road, and I kept checking it, half expecting to see that truck again. Paul was quiet, just staring out the window, his knee bouncing like crazy. I didn't say much either. My head was still spinning from that scraping, the puddle, the way the house felt like it was breathing down my neck. We got to a motel a few miles out, this rundown spot with flickering neon, and crashed there, figuring we'd sort out what to do later. But even with the door locked and the TV blaring, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. The air in the room felt off, too still, and I kept catching that faint sour smell, like it had stuck to me. I didn't sleep every time I closed my eyes. I saw that black gunk dripping, heard that music scratching in my ears. Paul passed out eventually, snoring on the other bed, but I just sat there, watching the window. Around 3 a.m., I heard it tires on gravel outside, slow and deliberate, like something was circling the lot. I crept over, peeked through the blinds, and there it was. Not the truck, but this old sedan, rusted out, idling under the streetlight. No driver, just the engine purring low, headlights cutting through the dark. My stomach dropped, and I backed away, telling myself it was a coincidence, that I was just paranoid. But then the radio in the room crackled, spitting out static in a faint hum, like that damn music was trying to claw its way back. I shook Paul awake, my voice all high and panicked, and he bolted up, staring at me like I'd lost it. The sedan rolled off a minute later, disappearing around the corner, and the radio went quiet. We just sat there, wide-eyed, knowing it wasn't over. We didn't stay at that motel. Long checked out at dawn, grabbed some gas station coffee, and kept moving. I told Paul I was done with that house, done with the whole area, and he nodded like he'd been thinking the same thing. We crashed at a buddy's place in town for a couple days, sleeping on his couch, but I couldn't relax. Every creak in his apartment, every car passing outside, had me jumping, waiting for that engine rumble or that music to start up again. Paul was a wreck, too. He barely talked, just stared at his phone or out the window like he was expecting something to show up. I kept smelling that sour stink, faint but there, like it had soaked into my clothes or my skin. One night I caught myself scrubbing my hands raw in the sink, trying to get rid of it, and I realized I was losing it. The house was miles away, but it felt like it had tagged along, hiding in my head, waiting to mess with me again. I decided to move, packed up what little I had, and hauled ass to a new city, figuring distance would fix it. Got a cheap apartment, nothing fancy, just a box with a bed and a view of a parking lot. First few weeks were okay. I'd jump at shadows, sure, but no trucks, no music, just normal city noise. Then one night, I was walking home from a late shift, cutting through an alley, and I heard it, that low engine growl, same as before. I spun around, and there was this old van, beat to hell, idling at the end of the street. No one inside, just those headlights staring me down. My heart was racing, and I bolted. Didn't stop till I was inside with the door locked. I peeked out my window, and it was gone. No tire marks, no sound, nothing. But I knew it was the same thing, or something like it, tied to that damn house. I sat there all night, lights on, wondering if it ever let me go. Paul and I don't talk much anymore. He stayed closer to campus, trying to finish school, but I could tell he wasn't the same. Last time we texted, he said he still hears stuff sometimes, like faint music when he's alone, and I didn't know what to say back. I've been in this new place for months now, and most days are fine. I work, I eat, I sleep, trying to act like none of it happened. But every once in a while I'll catch it. A shadow in the corner of my eye that's too tall, too wrong. Or that sour smell creeping in when I open a window. I don't know if it's the house, the truck, or just me falling apart, but it's there. I've stopped telling people about it. Friends think I'm nuts, and I don't blame them. Sometimes I wonder if Paul and I dreamed it all. Some shared freakout, but then I remember Donnie's face through that window, and I know it was real. It's been quiet lately, no weird cars, no noises, just my boring life ticking by. But last night, I was taking out the trash, and I saw it again. An old pickup, not black, but close enough, parked across the lot, engine off but lights on. I stood there, frozen, waiting for it to move or rev or something, but it just sat like it was watching me. My hands went cold, and I dropped the bag, spilling crap all over the pavement. I ran back inside, locked the door, and stayed up till morning, checking the window every hour. When I looked again at dawn, it was gone, no sign it had ever been there. I keep telling myself it's over, that whatever happened in that house stopped that night, but I don't believe it. It started out of nowhere, ended just as fast, and I still can't explain it. All I know is that house or whatever's tied to it knows where I am, and I don't think it's done with me yet. I've started avoiding quiet places, sticking to busy streets and loud bars where the noise drowns out my head. But even then, it sneaks in. Last week, I was at this dive with some coworkers, laughing at something dumb, when I heard it, a faint hum under the jukebox, that same old-timey tune. I spilled my beer, made some excuse about being tired, and got out of there fast. Nobody else noticed, but I could feel it like the house was whispering to me through the air, reminding me it's still around. I got home and checked every corner of my apartment, half expecting to see that black gunk dripping again, but it was clean. Still, I couldn't sleep, kept the TV on all night, volume up, just to block out the silence. I'm starting to think it's not just the house, but something older, something that used that sagging heap as a door. I don't know what it wants, but it's patient, and that scares me more than anything. I called Paul a few days ago, first time in months, just to see if he's okay. He picked up, voice all raspy, like he hadn't talked to anyone in a while. I asked if he still saw stuff, and he went quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then he said he'd driven by the house last week, couldn't help it, just needed to know. He said it looked the same, empty and falling apart. But there was a new truck parked out front, red this time, rusted to hell. He didn't stop, just kept going, but he swore he heard that music again, faint through his open window. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to go back to see if it's still there, but I'm too chicken shit. We hung up after that, and I've been jumpy ever since, checking my locks twice, keeping my curtains shut. That house is like a splinter I can't pull out, and it's driving me nuts. I've been having these dreams lately, blurry at first, but they're getting sharper. It's always the house, same peeling paint, same crooked porch, but it's darker, like the whole place is sinking into the ground. I'm standing out front, and that black truck's there, headlights on, engine rumbling so loud it shakes my bones. The door's open, just like that night, and I hear the scraping again, slow and heavy, coming from inside. I try to run, but my legs won't move. The gravel's like quicksand, pulling me down. Last night, I woke up soaked in sweat, and my room smelled like that sour, metallic stink, just for a second before it faded. I checked the windows, the doors, everything was locked, but I still felt watched. I'm starting to think the house isn't just a memory, it's reaching out, dragging me back somehow. I haven't slept right since, and I'm running on coffee and adrenaline. Work's a mess now too. I keep zoning out, jumping at every loud noise, waiting for that engine growl to sneak up on me. My boss pulled me aside yesterday, asked if I was okay, and I lied, said I was just tired. But I caught myself staring out the office window, and there it was, an old car, not a truck, but close enough, frosted, parked across the street, no one inside. I blinked, and it was gone, like it had never been there, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I told myself it was nothing, just my brain screwing with me. But I don't buy it anymore. That house did something to me, left a mark I can't shake. I keep thinking about Donnie, trapped in that truck, and wondering if that's what it wants me, Paul, anyone dumb enough to step inside. I'm scared to find out, but I'm more scared it won't give me a choice. I've stopped going out much, just work and home, sticking to crowded places when I can. But even that's not safe anymore. 2 nights ago, I was grabbing groceries, and the parking lot was dead quiet. No wind, no cars, just me and the hum of the store's lights. Then I heard it, that low engine noise, faint but growing, coming from the far end of the lot. I dropped my bags and spun around an old station wagon this time, headlights dim, idling in the shadows. My chest locked up, and I ran back inside, hiding behind the registers like a kid. The cashier looked at me weird, but I didn't care. Stayed there till the lot filled up with people again. When I checked, it was gone. No trace. But I could still feel it, like the house was laughing at me from miles away. I'm not sleeping, barely eating, just waiting for the next time it shows up. Paul texted me yesterday, out of the blue, and it was short. "It's back." I called him, but he didn't pick up, just left me a voicemail later, voice all shaky. He said he'd seen the red truck again, parked outside his new place, and the music woke him up at 3 a.m. He's moving too, somewhere far, but he doesn't think it'll help. I don't either. That house isn't just a place, it's a trap, and we're still caught in it. I keep seeing those old cars everywhere now, different ones, but they all feel the same, empty, watching, tied to that night. I walked by a mirror today and barely recognized myself, bags under my eyes, hands twitching. The house won. I think Kit didn't kill us, but it broke us. I don't know how to fight it, or if I even can. Last night was the worst, yet Ty was up late, staring at the ceiling when the power flickered. My heart sank, and I grabbed my phone, ready to run, but then I heard it. Tires on asphalt, slow and close, right outside my building. I crept to the window, peeked out, and there it was, an old black truck. Not the same one, but damn near it, parked under a streetlight. The engine was off, but the headlights glowed, weak and yellow, aimed at my window. That music started up, faint through the glass, and I felt the floor vibrate, just like back in the house. I backed away, tripped over my chair, and sat there, curled up, waiting for it to leave. It didn't move for hours. Dawn hit, and it was just gone, like always. I'm done pretending this is normal. It's the house, or whatever's in it, and it's not letting go. I'm writing this now because I don't know what else to do. I can't tell the cops, can't tell my family. They'd lock me up. It's been almost a year since that night, and I thought it'd fade, but it hasn't. The house is still out there, rotting away, and I bet it's waiting for someone else to walk in. Me and Paul were marked, and Donnie's gone because of it. I keep thinking it'll show up one day, that truck or something worse, and that'll be it. No warning, no escape. Last I checked, the truck was still gone when I left for work, but I felt it all day, that sour smell, that weight in the air. It stopped as sudden as it started. No explanation, no sense. And I'm left here, jumping at shadows, wondering why it picked us. I don't get it, and I never will. I drove by the house today, don't know why. Just had to see it one last time. It's still there, sagging worse now. Windows boarded up, like it's been abandoned forever. No truck, no music, just silence. But I didn't get out of the car, couldn't make myself. The air felt heavy even from the road, and I swear the front door looked cracked open, just like that night. I sat there, engine running, hands tight on the wheel, and it hit me. It's not about the house moving on. It's about me not being able to. Whatever happened, it stuck with me. And those old cars, that smell, they're proof it's not done. I peeled out, heart pounding, and told myself I'd never go back. But I know it doesn't matter. Distance didn't save me before, and it won't now. So that's it, my story, or whatever's left of it. I'm still here, still kicking, but I don't feel right. Every night, I check the locks, listen for engines, and pray it's over, even though I know it's not. The house won't explain itself, and neither will that truck. It just showed up, tore us apart, and left us hanging. I see it in flashes, Donnie's screams, Paul's face, that black puddle spreading. I don't know if it's a ghost, a curse, or just bad luck, but it's real, and it's mine now. If you're ever out that way, past the dirt roads and the trees, steer clear of that gray heap. It's quiet till it's not, and once it starts, it doesn't stop. I'm proof of that, and I'll be looking over my shoulder till it decides what's next.